everyone. Welcome to another episode of Keeping Up with APIDA. As you can see, we are here. We're recording. It's a day. It's the start of a week, and we're excited to chat with you all. On our last podcast, we had multiple things that were like, oh my god, we can just get into this at our next one, and so we're gonna get into different stories that we've experienced, or sharing our different stories around racist things that we've all experienced. So I'm Sharon Singh. I'm the program coordinator for Mosaic Cross Cultural Center, and also, a staff member, part of the APIDA task force. And I'll kick it off to Jeanne.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeanne. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm part of the APIDA task force, and passing it off to Anoop.
Hi folks, my name is Anoop Kaur, pronouns she, her, hers. Honorary part of the task force, currently serve as the AS Director of Academic Affairs. Today I'm eating paneer pizza after much begging to have my mom make it. Insert amazing photo here, because right now they look like leftovers. Okay. Passing it back.
Did you want to share what you're eating?
So at first I made so from Trader Joe's I got these vegan pesto sauce, and I've been making it into omelets with eggs and stuff, like mixing it, but then as we were preparing for this recording, I already finished. But I do have snacks in my room, so you might see me munching, crunching on the side. But besides that, I'm done.
Yeah. I was in the same boat where I made a tofu garlic fried rice, like just really quickly. But I was way too hungry, and so I ate it. And so we'll insert a picture as well somewhere. Also, Pearl may join us later on. She might not. We'll see what happens. But yeah, let's get into it. Who wants to kick us off?
I've been ready for this podcast.
There we
So
go. The list.
I'm a nerd. So like I always try to be prepared for things. I don't know if maybe I'm just like over prepared for things. I made a really long list
Oh, she can be
over the
prepared.
years, everything that anyone has ever said to me that I deem as offensive. And I have the right to deem it as offensive because they said to me. So I'm gonna kick us off with like a microaggression.
All right,
Through the years,
Yeah, right? Like,
I've gotten a lot of, where are you actually from? What are you? And you know what? I don't like that because I was born here in California. My parents may have been born elsewhere, but that's none of your business. And so over the years, everyone would always ask me, like, wow, you speak so articulately. You speak so well, like as if I shouldn't speak well, as if I shouldn't have an American accent. And so that's what I'm going to start us off on. I'm going to kick it back down. Okay.
Jeannie, have you ever experienced the like, where are you from, but where are you really from question?
For sure, but like it dates back to like elementary school, and I didn't realize that's what people meant, because like when they asked me that, I was like, oh, like especially if I was like in Colorado for a year or whatever. When they asked me, I was like, oh, I'm from California, like so casually, and then they're like, no, like where are you really from? And it's like kind of at first I was just kind of like, what do you mean? Like I didn't catch on until like later on. I was like, oh, you're asking me where my parents are from? Like I don't know, like it's just like such an awkward question to ask, especially like when it comes from adults. Like you're just like, I don't really know. And so I guess like that's like the main part. I feel like I do get it from peers like when I was younger, and maybe as I got older, I also surrounded myself a lot more with like APIDA like peeps. So like I never really experienced that as much anymore, but definitely with people that were white and that were at Grand Junction, Colorado. Just would like to call you all out.
It's so interesting. So I mean, I have gotten those questions from white folks. You know, and I've also gotten it from other Desi folks. And I think that's the part that really makes me um kind of like take a, like a step back and be like, okay, there has to be another way of asking what you're trying to ask, right? Like I remember I was back pre, COVID times. I was getting lunch from Panda in the student union, and someone just straight up was like, India, and I was like, no, and it was this thing like, no, but like you are, and I was like, no, I'm not, and it was just like, it wasn't even full questions. And I would liken that to like even this like the where are you from question. And it's very funny because I had a coworker with me who like saw it happen, and then afterwards they were like, what? And so now, we just kind of use it to like as a joke, because it is something that you have to laugh at when people are just like, no, like you are what I need you to be. And it's like, no, I'm not from India. Like it's I like my family has been removed from India for like 5 generations. And so, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I mean, yes, obviously I look a certain way and I know that my ancestry is there, but you're trying to imply that I am currently, a person who should come from India. And it's very interesting to have that kind of be questioned and be like, no, you're lying to me. It's like, why would I lie? Why would I lie?
Or the fact that they're like, wait, you said that? No, it's not true. Let me tell you what you really are. Like,
right.
don't be telling me what I am and what I'm not. So
right. And I think that's that question of like, where are you from? It does really get to this aspect of people wanting to place you and categorize you so that it makes sense. Like as human beings, we are trying to make sense of what we are seeing. And when it doesn't make sense because of the response or whatever, then it's kind of like, no, that's not the truth that I know. Um, and so I think that question, it's very deep seated. So I know, like, you know, the question I'm asking for that one is, are there other ways of asking that question, right? That really implies what that person might be asking, but also honoring our complex histories.
For me, to answer your question, Sharon, I would say maybe something like, what's your heritage? Or like, where your ancestors from? I feel like that's kind of a respectful way. That kind of makes the conversation more intellectual rather than like trying to pinpoint like a monoracial thing that they can label you as.
Right. And it then also accounts for a more complex history, because it's almost like when you go to a grocery store and you're checking out and the cashier's just like, you know, how's your day? Like you really want me to get into the fact that I'm depressed and like about to eat this whole bag of chips by myself, like, or you just want me to say, good, I'm good, thanks for asking, how are you, and do the polite conversation thing, right? So I totally agree, Anoop. Like it is, if you're really asking me where I'm from, then be ready for a more complex conversation. Yeah.
I think I really resonate with that. I don't know, because of like the multiracial, multi-ethnic label. I've always had questions like, which culture do you resonate more with? Which side do you like better? Um, and then like if I don't say something, they'll be like, huh, that's kind of weird. Like they're like pathologizing my pathway. And like if I don't say one culture, they're like, I can't make sense of that. Like it's abnormal. And like resulting feelings, like I don't know if this is a thing, but I feel like I have racial imposter syndrome. When I go into either culture, I'm like, do I belong here? Don't I belong here? What should I do? And so like those questions for me, I always get them. especially like when someone meets me for the first time and they'll be like, well, I want to understand more, but no, you're asking me to educate you, and that's not my burden. I'm sorry. I'm not going to deal with that. That's like, this is like an evolved evolution of my fields. It might be a little aggro, but that's just because like over the years, I would just like answer that question, and then now I'm just like, I don't want to deal with those questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, that question also, you know, the way that it's shared, with us is that it casts Asian folks as perpetual foreigners, and that, we can't ever really be from the United States and that we're foreigners no matter what generation we're from, right? And there's historical ties to that. And so, yeah, definitely like whether or not how we view ourselves, right, and what our history is, that question doesn't really capture the depth of our histories as APIDA folks in the United States sometimes. Yeah. Okay. What's the next thing?
Maybe we could talk about how like people like see us for who they are and they start making fun of our physical features, especially like compared, like for me, like I've experienced like kids like trying to call me ling ling or like just like whatever sounds they make as like Cantonese, especially like growing up. Like I speak to my parents in Cantonese, and so like when they hear me, they try to replicate and make similar noises, I guess, that they hear, and it's just kind of like annoying. And then sometimes they would like try to do like the squinty eyes or something like that, or like they're like and I'm just like, why did I never like stand up to that, and it makes me kind of frustrated because like when I was younger, since I surrounded myself in a lot of like Asian American like communities, a lot of us tend to like gravitate towards speaking in Cantonese. So when I moved to an all white like city and town, it was really hard for me to adjust and adapt to just solely speaking in English with like my peers and like not finding someone with a similar like physical feature as myself. And so when they made fun of me, I didn't realize because that's not what I'm used to. And so I just thought that they were being nice or like, I don't know. And I just laughed with them because it seemed funny at the time. And then now I'm really angry that I didn't know earlier that I could have just popped off on them because too late now. I don't even know where their whereabouts are. So if you're watching this, I'm at you right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Anoop, were you about to say something?
You can go first.
Oh, I was about to say, yeah, like I'm trying to recall moments where I was, made fun of because of the way that I looked. And, I think I was more so bullied for, looking awkward or thin or whatever. But I remember like, I had a hard time making friends. So I definitely felt anytime someone was making fun of me that, they weren't doing it as like to like joke around with me. I could definitely feel that like energy of like you're being really mean and like that mean spirit is coming through. Um and I think the only thing I can remember is like I remember someone was trying to be funny and you're not funny if you're making fun of someone. But they called me like Slurpee Queen, which really comes from, the historical ties and the stereotypes of South Asians owning, gas stations and obviously, The Simpsons really like perpetuated that stereotype in the early 90s and 2000s. And, I remember being like, haha, that's not funny. Like, I don't like that. And then walking away. And but it was definitely like embarrassing in that moment. And, everyone else laughed. and it's one of those things where it's not the same as like being made fun of because of the way that you look, like you were saying, Jeannie, but like I think that's the closest where that stereotype, right, of like how people expect you to look or be was like placed on me.
Wait, I really want to know how all these kids way back when like came up with all these like names to make fun of other people. Like, where did you find that phrase like ling ling? Like, what inspired you to feel that bold? You know, like I just really want to talk and really want to know.
I think that's a great question. In my experience, kids are mean, and okay, they're just mean. I'll say it. I was bullied when I was younger. Didn't have anything to do with what I looked. Like my teacher would be like, "Oh, it's just because that dude likes you," and I'd be like, "What? No, I don't agree with that." But going back to people making assumptions based off my skin color and things, bro, I can tell you so many stories, but I'm just gonna tell you the cliff notes. Um, I would have friends. So like during the summer, I got melanin, I get pretty brown. I would have friends like put their arm against my arm and be like, I'm almost as brown as you. Like I'm so close to being as brown as you, as if like my tan was something that they could accomplish and like appropriate. I don't know. It just rubbed me the wrong way. I would just be like, okay, so you get complimented for having a tan, but you don't face any of the repercussions that I face for having my skin color. You don't get followed around a store and then get ignored at the counter because of your skin color. No, you just get to have a nice tan, post it on your Instagram and be like, ooh, look at me. I actually like went to the beach and stuff. That's my rant about skin color. And I've actually like experienced, I am still fairer than most, I want to say. And like my mom has a darker skin color than me. So when I was younger, like there was an instance in the store. A lot of the instances of racism always happened in stores for me. I don't know why. But like this cashier asked my mom, she was like, is that your baby? Because I was like a very fair skinned baby. Like, that can't be your baby. Like, are you her babysitter or something? And then my mom later told me, like, the cashier thought was like, oh, she must be mixed. Or, oh, look at her hair. Like, she has to be mixed. There's no way that's like, if that's your baby, then like her dad must look really different. I was just like, this cashier, like, she's been making assumptions about me when I was like 2 months old. I don't understand. Like, can you mind your own business? And yes, that woman is my mom. Like my mom would walk me home from school. The crossing guard would be like, who's this lady walking with you? Why do you care? Okay, I understand you're a crossing guard, but also like people need to mind their own business. I feel like all the time I'm like, just mind your own business. Like I'd be wearing a Punjabi suit, which is like a salwar and kameez. People would be like, why are you wearing that? Or, oh, you look really Indian today. Next day, I'd be wearing hoops and maybe I did my makeup a certain way. People would be like, oh, you look hella Latina today. What's up with that? Like, let me look however I want to look. I please myself. I don't know. I could go on so many rants. I don't want to monopolize our podcast, but like,
so interesting to hear because you are Latina, you are Desi, like South Asian. Like how, like, I think it's so interesting, right? It's like you have to only be one. And it's like, but you can't be one. You are multiple beings, right? Because these are all of your identities. They make you who you are. And you wearing a Punjabi suit or hoop earrings or whatever, like that may be cultural signifiers, right, or have historical ties to these communities. They're not costumes though, they're just part of your culture, right? It's not like you're like Clark Kent and Superman over here, like, today I feel like being Clark and like doing newspaper shit. Like, that's not how it is. But it's interesting that like that's what's being placed on folks who are making these comments, right? In their mind, they're like, Anoop is, this makes sense because of whatever reason they decided to say it out loud.
Yeah. I mean, I still get asked the question, what are you? And I still don't, like, I've never had an answer I could say with complete confidence. Like, I don't know. I don't know if other people feel this way. I don't want to project feelings, but I feel like I don't know what I can claim, like what I'm allowed to claim, just because, like, my pathway obviously is different from someone who's like completely monoracial in either culture. Um, so that was just like a tidbit. But I feel like on this podcast, we have like the abundance of so many perspectives and like so many things people have experienced that are just so different. And it makes me like realize how big and vast the PETA identity is. And like not enough conversations are about that.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
I think that's also part of the reason why, like, I'm glad that there's an APIDA task force on campus, because I feel like I don't know what everyone on this campus has gone through, but like I feel like if there was this resource available for students, if they were to face any of these similar like situations on our campus, that they have like that community to like kind of help support them, you know? Because I feel like Chris has mentioned this a lot. We have a really big APIDA like community on campus, and like we talk about that a lot, but like we don't see a lot of like APIDA like base things versus like other, you know, things around campus. So yeah, that's just my personal thought.
Do you all have stories of being microaggressed or racist shit being said to you on campus or like near campus?
I don't feel like I have on campus, but I feel like I've had like outside of campus, not like necessarily like now or recently, but like I think growing up, I definitely experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, Anoop, that one time, that meeting.
I
Wait,
was
just
waiting for
kidding.
you to say it. I'm like,
I
Jeanne,
don't know
you're
why I like
lying.
completely
You're
missed it.
lying.
Oh my God, can I please? Can I
Yes.
please? Because like I feel like I like I should be the one to do it because your role, yeah, okay. So Anoop and I were at this meeting, you know, and can I can I say that you were like the chair, or is that too?
You can say it.
Okay, so we were at this meeting, right? And Anoop was the chair, and so you know, Anoop had wanted the meeting to be a much more fulfilling and much more like productive, you know. So she had invited like, you know, different guests and things like that throughout like the weeks and stuff to kind of help engage more people around campus and things like that. And someone particular had came to our meeting, and I guess we were doing introductions or something, and then they started spitting out how much they enjoy going to different countries and things like that, which I was like, okay, like cool. And like I was like in the middle of like typing something, and like I was just like listening, nodding my head, and all of a sudden I heard something, and I was like, wait, wait, and I like looked up, and then basically they were saying how much they love a particular country, like an East Asian country, and I was like, wait, wait, but like they weren't saying it like, oh, like yeah, I just enjoy traveling there. It's just like the way they describe the reason why they love that country was just like a little overboard and like a little like uncomforting, because like they're a really grown male that's white, and I'm just like, this is really uncomforting, because the person sitting to like his left and right was also like an East Asian like person, but like he, whenever like I sat across from them, and like I feel like he purposely had looked specifically at the people in the room that were from the like East Asian countries, that he felt like matched what he was saying, if that makes sense. Because he was like, oh, like I love the culture, and he was just like looking at me, and I'm just like hella mad at that point, and I just like looked at him like, okay, and like why are you looking at me like, and then like he kept on glancing over at someone next to him, and mind you not, he's like very old, and the fact that we're like this kind of age, and like later on we found out that he also has a daughter around our age, and like the way like it felt like we were also being sexualized in a way, and it just made me very uncomfortable, and it's just really annoying because like whenever he was praising that country, he just made it a point to look at all three of us specifically.
Mm.
And like even when it came to like the other adult in the room that was like also a female identified like around our age person, like he like she was like down on the other side of the table, but he made it a point to like lean over and like looked at her. And like, I don't know, to me that's like very uncomforting, and like it's just really annoying. And like he had made other comments in other meetings with many other adults, and he said, oh yes, like Southeast Asian countries, yes. And he just kept on emphasizing that, and I just can't, like, I just, you can add on, I just cut myself off, but like maybe you could add on any other things that I've missed that you found.
Honestly, if you know who this person is, Jean's provided a lot of descriptions. Just saying, like, keep your eye out. I don't know. Trying to speak truth to power is so hard. And like when that person is so high up, you don't know what you can do. I don't know. It was a very uncomfortable experience because it was a secondhand experience for me, and I had to recognize like I have privilege here. I'm not being spoken to in a certain way. I was just like watching it happen. Um, but yeah, San Jose State is no stranger to microaggressions. It's no stranger to like racist overtones. Want to put that out there because people think that like the Bay Area is a progressive area, that California is a blue state, that you know, like these things don't happen here. That's like the biggest lie you can ever tell yourself. We're no different.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, with COVID and how it's led to a targeting of our Chinese community specifically, right? It's been very interesting because there's been a ton of viral videos of, you know, startup CEOs going off on Asian families celebrating birthdays out in public, right? Or um, uh, you know, folks kind of calling the cops or, you know, complaining about Asian folks and calling it, you know, the Chinese virus at like a Trader Joe's and stuff like that. You know, like it's not, you know, California is not immune to the racist shit that is being said, right? And the fact that our, you know, I don't want to say president because I don't acknowledge him in that way, but you know, 45, you know, called it like Chinese virus, kung fu, like all these other things that have been said to describe, you know, the pandemic that we're in, and really labeling it as, you know, a group of people who have nothing to do with the virus has been really, um, you know, it's highlighting the racism within our own communities, right? Because we aren't seeing a unified voice come out, right? And then on top of that, how multiple communities right now are dealing with the racist shit in our country. Um, and, you know, I think now more than ever, right? Like we need students who are going to be voting for the very first time, to understand the power that they have, but also acknowledge that like things are deeply broken, right? And our one individual experience dealing with a microaggression or a racist act is just a drop in the bucket, right? Because if we can have a whole podcast about this, there's something very telling. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go.
Okay, I just wanted to add, it's also been referred to as a kung flu, and let me tell y'all, this has happened before with the Chinese Exclusion Act. Asians were described as diseased. It was a reason for them to refuse immigration to the US. So like my biggest thing for like people who are like moved by this is to really just study the history, because like in the past, like Asian activists have fought against this. They went to the courts. They went to their elected leaders. They went to petitions. They did all of that. They protested. And so like when I think about Asian activism, not a lot of it is taught in the classroom. Like I only learned about this through an internship. So like, this is why ethnic studies is so important. This is why you need to take an Asian American studies class, because, you know, Jose Rizal, I always go back to this quote, no history, no self. And like, this racist shit, you know, we live in a white supremacist institutionalized country. And I don't like saying the president's name either. I put it on the Republican Party, because the Republican Party has an anti-China platform. They're the ones propagating it. So that's all I have to add. Those are my 2 cents.
And I was also gonna add on, just in general, like even close within my own community, like my aunt and uncle, like especially my aunt, she's very scared to leave the house ever since the pandemic happened. Given that, one, she is high risk, right, because she's older, but also the fact that like she's so scared that like if she's just walking down the street, she might get hit and like get called or like get things thrown at. And like that's very like relevant in like right now. And like the fact that like so much is happening in like the 21st century, like right now, that's crazy. And like a lot of the history that we've learned about, like the Chinese Exclusion Act, that wasn't like that far from now, if that makes sense. And like also take some Asian American like studies class. And also like personally, I'm a social science and prep for teaching major, so I had to take this history 189A and B. It's a sequence class, and I highly recommend it because you learn a lot about like California's like history and like how it's built. It's through Professor Gonzal that when I took it, and like even though his class is a little bit like harder in the like in the terms of like you write a lot of notes and things like that, you actually really learn a lot. And like the way he taught it, I feel like it was very fair. You like learn a lot of the different sides of like California. And like I used to love California, right? Like especially growing up in fourth grade, you learn about all of these social studies, whatever. And like I was like, oh my God, I love California. California's so cool, like the gold rush, right? But then after taking that class, I'm like, ew, California's kind of ugly. You know, it really does have its ugly side, like growing up and like, or not like growing up for myself, but like even growing up for like California itself, it's like really ugly. There's sides that you don't expect, and like it's really gross and it's really ugly. That's all.
Yeah, like when I first immigrated here, and like trying to navigate like different neighborhoods, I was like, none of this makes sense, right? Like literally, like you'll be on a block and it's so nice. Like you'll see these like 5-bedroom homes with a nice ass yard and a backyard, and then you walk just a block over and you see apartment complexes and trash in the street, and then you turn a corner and it's a dead end, and I'm like, what the hell? Like none of this makes sense. The way that our cities in California have been planned have been, you know, really, like urban planning is one thing, but it's, you can see how it's also excluded people of color, especially Black folks, out of neighborhoods, right? Which then has the schools tied to them, right? That has the resources tied to that community, like parks and different ways that communities can gather. And, you know, like, there's just a lot. There's just a lot that we could get into. You know, and I want to like pull us back a little bit because we could give a whole bunch of facts right now, but also like, you know, take the time to study for yourself and how your community and your relationship and history to California, right? Especially if you're an SJST student, really learn about the history of San Jose as well. Like even within San Jose, like the way that different communities have kind of left their mark in the city. You know, the racist things that have happened in East San Jose, it's, you know, mind-boggling.
Can I give a fun fact real quick? So
Yeah.
as an orientation leader, we learn a lot of facts, like a lot about like San Jose State and like the facts around like San Jose State and stuff like that, especially like the different buildings. Did you know that Yale Hall, which is well known, which is like Yoshihiro Uchida Hall, it actually used to be a Japanese internment camp that people get sent to. And even the building that's named after like Yoshihiro Uchida, like he's an actual person, and he used to teach, or he still does teach judo at San Jose State. And I think from what I had remember is that he had two options, either to be sent to the internment camp or participate in the war or something like that. And his whole family was sent to that internment camp, and then he came back and then he started teaching judo. So it's very close in our neighborhoods. So don't forget.
Yeah, it was a processing space. And our campus recognizes it, but like we definitely don't honor then the legacy that it's part of, right? And how, like, if you're a Japanese student on the SJSU campus, I think those are things that we need to have conversations about. But yeah, anyway.
Another tidbit. People always give props to San Jose's Chinatowns. Some of them were burned down in like the 1900s.
Japantown?
Japantown and a Chinatown. I think it was called, I don't know, I was trying to Google it real quick. But there was like a Chinatown that was burned down on Jackson and Taylor. And so they're trying to rebuild a park to honor it. And right now, I don't know how civically engaged our listeners are, but if you're interested, sign a petition, because they're trying to like rename the park like after like proposing it to be like Sakura Park, because they think that sounds like more ethnic or whatnot, but the people are actually asking them to name it after like John Henlon, who like played a role in saving or like fighting for it. And so that's just like another tidbit that's happening right now.
Ugly, very ugly, very ugly.
Yeah. So, a lot of our histories are tied to, the experiences that we're even currently having. So we've talked about some of the name calling, being made fun of, and experiencing racism based on how we look. Are there any other like moments that y'all can name that like really tie into your experience? And like, for me, a lot of the things that I feel like I've experienced, like, sometimes I don't realize that it was a racist thing until like I like look back at it and I'm like, oh shit. Do y'all have any of those experiences?
In dating, I would say I have a bunch of those experiences. Like, I think Carl mentioned it in the last podcast, but being called exotic is not a compliment at all. And then
so
like,
ugly.
Exactly. And then I don't know, I've had guys approach me who thought I like looked more Indian than Latina, and then they say, "Oh, you probably only date Indian guys, huh? Because you're Indian." And I'd be like, "What?" Like, I don't understand where that's coming from. And then they're like, "Yeah, you like to stay within your culture." And I'd be like, I'm not staying away. Like, my reason from staying away from you is not culture, it's because you're a dick. Excuse my French.
Yeah, I could see that. Like, I definitely feel like I've had like people who messaged me before and like, oh, like what kind of like Asian are you? Like, wow, you're really cute for like a Chinese. Like, what is your standard of how cute a Chinese is supposed to look like? First of all, I'm Chinese and Vit. Second of all, that's ugly. Third of all, don't be saying that shit. Like, oh, sorry. Don't be saying that stuff out loud and like all these other like things. And like, don't be coming at me sideways because I will pop off on you. And I don't know. It's just really like, it gives me a sour taste in my mouth, Like, how are you like a grown man, like saying all these things like so casually? And like, I see people like I've been on dating apps before, right? And like people would like, I don't know if y'all like ever use Hinge or whatever, but Hinge gives you the option to like respond to someone's profile or like things and stuff. And people will be like writing me some really weird stuff. And they're like, oh, wow, you're so small and tiny for like an Asian girl. Like, I'm national average height. I'm 5'4", first of all. Second of all, don't be calling me tiny. Like, don't be calling me tiny. Like, that's ugly. Like, just, yeah. So, like, Carl said, like, y'all failed me. Not because of me, but like because of you. And like I just can't. Maybe actually I am part of the problem in the sense that like I'm just very like all over the place, but like I've never like I don't feel like I don't understand how you're so comfortable with like messaging people and saying things like that, and like people's like social media footprint on Twitter, like that's a prime example. Like you get exposed so easily by just keyword searching. So like think before you like post something on the internet, especially like on Twitter and things like that. And like I just can't.
Yeah, I used to be on dating apps too before I got married. Well, okay, I was on one. Anyway, and it, it would be like, are you really that, like, is that your actual height? Right? Like, I don't know. It's this thing of like, oh, is your hair really that long? Like, and I'm just like, why would I lie? First of all, and then second of all, I think it is that thing of like, as an Asian woman, like you have to meet these check boxes in order to really like be worth it, or like kind of like back to that, like, oh, you're exotic, right? Like that's gross.
Or like they're like, wow. Oh, sorry, I was gonna add on real quick. Wow, you don't have an accent? That's crazy.
Oh my God.
Are you
That's
born
literally
here?
what I was about to add. I would get offended and I'd be like, why would you say that? Because it's text. I can be bolder over text, I feel. And then they'll be like, oh, gross, you're so PC, you're such a snowflake, or like things like that. Like they think, I don't know why. Maybe this is my experience because shitty people out there, but like I would always get responses like that and I'd be like, why can't I find one wholesome being who doesn't like who just says, oh, I'm sorry I offended you, let me do better. Like that's a good response.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's also like if I'm walking down the street and someone goes, smile, right? Oh, you look so pretty if you smile, girl. And I look at them and I roll my eyes like, fine, you're a bitch anyway. Like, you're so stuck up, right? And I've gotten those like responses a lot. And it's that thing where it's like, but you just hit on me, so you do think I'm cute, but now you're like, I don't know what it is. Why men act this way? I don't know.
And to add on, like there's that double standard, right? Like imagine like I've said this to someone, I forgot who, but like it's just like, for example, if a guy cat calls you and then you reject them, right? Then they get mad. But then if you ask them like, oh, if you have a little sister, right, or an older sister, how would you feel if someone did that? And then all of a sudden double standard comes along and they're like, no, that would be so messed up. Like, da, da, da. Like, okay, so if you could recognize that with your own siblings and someone that is like related to you, why can't you recognize and realize that like all these other people out here like that are also like female identified, like does that just not add up to you? Like does that just like slide over your head all of a sudden? Like that makes me angry too. So
well, I mean, it's a lot of double standards that like there's this thing where like hashtag girl dad has become really popular, and I'm like, but I don't see the hashtag like mom boy, right? Or like boy mom or whatever. Like, what is that? Like I used to commute to San Francisco for like 2 years of my life. And, I would take the Muni, I would take BART into San Francisco. And I would constantly see, especially like women, praising men for taking their child to school. But then I'd look over at the back of the bus and a mom is taking her child to school and no one is praising her. And especially if it was a woman of color, like a black woman or a Asian or a Latinx woman. Like I never saw her get praised for doing childcare, but as soon as you see even a man of color like doing the thing that you're supposed to do as a parent, like I think there's just a lot of double standards that are something that we need to think about a little bit, and then how that comes off in the way that this is racism. Like, this is what this podcast is about. It's about how we've experienced racism. But I'm also seeing it happen right outside of our own community. And I think that's something that we really need to analyze.
I feel like it's so hard because it's not only outside of our community, because a lot of the times it's within our own communities as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's also addressed enough as well, because I think even like within like different types of like Chinese people from like different provinces and things like that, right? Like even people like that, like shows or things like that, I feel like it portrays that like, oh, because you're not from this particular like province or like city, then all of a sudden you're less than. And I think that even, yeah, I don't know, that's just.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot. I think like being objectified is not a compliment. Gender roles, they suck. But like that all has to do with the patriarchy. And I feel like we could go in depth about that. But I definitely want to add like my own communities are no strangers to being racist against other communities. Like within the South Asian community, there's definitely a prevalence of colorism and anti-Blackness. Same with the Latinx community. So like I know like this podcast is addressing things people have said to me, but like I've been in rooms where people have said things about other people. Things like, oh, like that Black man must be, must be dangerous, or like one time my cousin had a Black boyfriend and like my whole family revolted against her. They were like, this is bad, like you shouldn't do that. And like, if you go to the temple, people, and you're in a mixed race couple, people will stare at you. People will like make it their business to turn around and look at you and be like, what are you doing? And so like, I don't know, there are a lot of like untouched feelings I have about that. And for me, it really starts off with conversations with my parents. Like, why do you think that way? Like, were you socialized a certain way? Like, it helps for me to come from a place of understanding, because if I come from a place of anger, they're not going to respond. They're just going to be like, Anoop's on her soapbox again.
Yeah. Okay, what else is on that list?
My list is so long. Oh my God. But like kind of going back to San Jose State being no stranger, I was sitting in my I was about to say genetics class. Okay. And well, it has to do. So genetics class. And like my teacher, for reference, is like a young white woman. And I was sitting in like the second row, as any studious person would sit in the second row. First row, a little too close to the teacher, a little too personal, but the second row, it's comfortable. You're still paying attention. Side note. Okay, anyways, we're having a lecture about like diabetes and the history of it. And I didn't even raise my hand. She was asking, I was kind of zoned out. She was asking some question about like, the prevalence of diabetes in some communities. I was not raising my hand. She turns to me, kind of like gestures towards me. I didn't know she was talking to me. But later I find out she was like, well, you must have a history of diabetes in your community. And so I like look around, I'm like, is she talking to me? And then she was like, yeah, I'm talking to you, Anoop. And I was just like, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Like, what did you mean by that? And she was like, yeah, like in brown communities, diabetes is very prevalent. Okay, diabetes is prevalent on both sides of my family, but that was racist. You judged me for my skin color and just assumed that some disease or something was prevalent in my community. And so bad on me. I didn't really follow up on that. I didn't really call her out because I was just like so shocked. I was like, here I am sitting in class.
We cannot spend our whole lives following up on the racist shit that's been said and done to all of us. Like it's tiring. Sometimes you're like, damn, you as a professional need to check yourself, but it's not going to be by me today.
I was just like, girl, why are you coming at me like this? Like, I'm not ready for this. And like later my friends joked, they're like, oh, Anoop, is that why you eat so much candy? And I went off on them. I was just like, excuse me, just because I didn't say this in front of the professor, like that was totally out of line. Like, you cannot say that to me. But you know, it was a hard day on me. And we had Jeans and I had a board meeting later in the day, and I was just like sitting there so angry. I don't think I spoke during that meeting. I was just like, you know what? Like, I hate how like one instance, like one thing can put you off for your entire day, and like that's all you can think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that day too. Like Anoop came back into the office and she was so shocked and angry. She's just like,
Yeah.
dang.
I feel like there's been moments like that where educators have kind of put their foot in their mouth. Like this is grad school, so not at San Jose State, but I was going through, I missed orientation for grad school. I know, whatever. And I had to meet with a person who's pretty high up and fill out some paperwork and agreements or whatnot that usually they make grad students do during orientation. And I made an appointment with her, you know, and I apologized and I was like, I'm sorry, like a family emergency came up. I had to miss orientation. And she was like, oh, it's okay, you know, like you need to just fill out this paperwork. And I was sitting there filling out the paperwork, and she was sitting there at her desk waiting. And she goes, so, like, you know, how is it living in the US? And I was just like, um, fine. I've been living in the US for almost 20 years. And she's like, oh, really? When did you, like, so, so do you pay international student fees? And I looked up from the forums and I was like, I'm not an international student. And she was like, oh, okay. And then like went back to her typing. And I was like, what? You know, and there's nothing wrong with being an international student, but you looked at me and you made an assumption that I'm not from this country, and your questions, right, were kind of like, you know, a noob story that you just assumed, you know, based on the color of my skin, the way that I look, the way that I speak, that I must be this.
Oh my God, you made me remember a story that's very similar. I was at a store with my mom, like an American store, and I was like talking to her in Chinese, and like these two people behind the counter thought that I didn't understand English, and they were just talking math stuff, right? And I looked at them in the eye, and I was like, all right, what's your problem? And I got hella mad because I was like, are you really kidding me right now? You're like a professional, like sales, retails, whatever person. Not saying that you need a course for that, but I'm just saying like that's not how you treat your customers. You don't talk smack in front of their face, regardless of whether they know that language or not. And
Yeah.
that's not okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that made
had
me
so many
angry.
of those instances, like when you're not speaking English, if you're speaking a different language, people are like, oh, why are they speaking a different language? They must not know English. And then they go off like on this racist rant, and then I speak English, and they're like, whoa, like that's so interesting. You don't have an accent or anything, and yet you know
Yeah.
English. And I'd be like,
And
oh my God, bilingual people are smarter, hands down. Teach your babies multiple languages. That helps their brains. So haters gonna hate.
yeah, and also like that has also happened at like Chinatown before, right? Like I'm with my friends, I'm speaking in English because like I'm not gonna speak in Cantonese with them like just out on the street just because I'm in Chinatown, you know? And then these people out here on the streets, not behind the counter now, but behind like the grocery stores and stuff, they're also like, dang, like, da, 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 da. And I start speaking to them in Cantonese, like, what's your issue? And they're in shock too. So that's what I meant by like racism within too. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's also, so I mean, like, you know, these are people in like positions of power, or like people who are, you know, part of our own communities. But has there ever been an incident like where, you know, where an experience of a microaggression or racism, like straight up racism, has kind of hindered like like you purchasing something or living your life, right? Or getting a resource that you need. Like for me, I clearly remember this. my mom wanted to buy me a car for my 16th birthday. And so we went down to the dealer, and my mom did her research. And my mom's an accountant, by the way, FYI. And we go to the car dealer, and white dude, salesperson, goes, oh, what can I help you with? And my mom's like, oh, I've like come before, or I've gone to other car dealers. I've test drove this car, but y'all have a great deal going on here. We would love to buy this car. And he just goes, and my mom is like, my mom had me when she was like 19, 20. So she, like, when I was 16, she looked like she was like 28. And so she does look fairly young, but still no excuse. And this person goes, oh, like, you're gonna buy her this car? Like, what is she, your sister or something? And then mom goes, no, this is my daughter. It's her 16th birthday coming up. I would like to buy this car. And he straight up goes, oh, what, is your dad gonna buy it? And my mom's like, no, I am an adult. I can buy this car. And he's just like really insisting that she can't afford the car. And my mom's like, at this point, she's like, where's your manager? Like, I don't want to deal with you anymore. And he's just like, no, like, there's just only two of us working today, this weekend. Like, let me go run your credit. And he's being petty at this point. Like, he won't let us see someone else. He won't let us talk to another person. He won't give us the number to his manager. And my mom's at this point like, fine, run my credit. I want to just buy this car and leave. And he comes back and goes, oh, it didn't get approved. And my mom's like, that's not possible. My mom's an accountant. She knows her shit. And he just refused to sell us this car. And so my mom is fuming at this point, right? And she takes all the business cards that she can get her hands on from the front desk. We get home, she calls up her bank, and she goes, I want that car from that car dealer, and I want it delivered to my house. And, the perks of having a credit union, they go above and beyond. Invest in your small credit unions. And she got that car from that car dealer, and that person did not get commission or have the last word. My mom did. But it's that things like that where, this person clearly had an agenda and like was racist enough to did not care about making money. So I mean, did you all ever experience anything like that where you were like refused service or were treated really shitty?
So many times. Oh my God. I had an experience once. I was with my partner. We were at a 7-Eleven. It was owned by a white dude. And like he would not stop watching us. And like at one point he left the counter, walked around the counter and started following us around the store. And I was just like, I like turned to my partner. I was like, what is he doing? Like, what do we do? And okay, I was really craving some ice cream, but I was like, this is not worth it. So we just walked away. Like, I don't know, like what he thought we were gonna do. Two college kids walking around in a 7-Eleven would have gave him a lot of business by buying overpriced snacks. But no, we were like walked out of the store. It was really creepy because like how they have like those circle mirrors. Like I would like glance back and I'd be like, he's following us. Like at first I thought I was being paranoid because like he was like fixing things on the shelves. But like after like 15 minutes, I was just like, no way. No way is this dude like not following us. Like he thinks we're gonna steal something or something. Sharon, you're muted. I don't know if you're talking.
I was gonna say, yeah, he probably did not have to arrange your bag of chips that many times.
Yeah. It was, I don't know, it was like something. And that happened pretty recently. That happened like pre-Rona, like in February. So that's like the most one I can remember. Like if I were to think back with experiences with my mom, I would say my mom's pretty strong. Like she's like she's not one to be violent and she's one to like just let things go. Unlike me, I'm like let me fight people, come at me. But that's not my mom. So like she would speak to me in Punjabi and people would be like, damn, like your mom sounds so angry. And I'd be like, she's just like speaking Punjabi, like I've had white ladies approach me like when I'm with my mom and she's speaking Punjabi, and they'd be like, "Are you okay? Like, are you okay? Like, are you fine? Like, do you need me to call someone for you?" And I just be like, no, I'm fine. I'm with my mom. I'm safe. Like, it was, I don't know. I've just had like my childhood. It was not a childhood. I feel like when you are BIPOC, you kind of grow up faster. You kind of notice to like look for things. You notice to like be cautious of people. Like my mom told me to be cautious of the cops. She didn't trust them. I think I was with my friends once and we got pulled over and we were like, shit, what do we do? Like, why did this guy pull us over? We were not speeding. We all had our car seat, not car seats. We're not old. Seat belts on. We all had our seat belts on and everything. And I just like, I think back to all these experiences and the common denominator is that people don't know how to interact with like people from different races. Like we're all so monoracially socialized, and like I don't see how we can gain value from that at all as a society. If you want to call America a melting pot, well then we're more like a mosaic, like a salad bowl. Like we're mixed in together, but we don't interact with one another. So I don't really see how it's a melting pot. I see like all these divisions, like East Side San Jose. It's a very Asian populated place. But if you like go over to North San Jose, boom, all these white people, not a lot of Asians. So like there are just like these like like not vocally said, but you know that those barriers are there. You know that like when a person approaches you, you have to talk a certain way. Like I have my white people voice, you know, I have my like, let me be polite now and speak in a certain way so they don't think of me as a threat voice. And then I have like my normal everyday I'm gonna come at you voice. So it's like just being socialized in that way. I went on a long rant, but being socialized in that way, yeah, Sharon, I've had experiences, and I'm gonna tell you, most of them are at stores. Capitalism sucks.
I feel like personally, I never have experienced that. I've seen a lot of my friends experience things like that, I feel like personally. Um, but I feel like if I were to encounter like things like that, I would pop off. Especially like regardless of whether it's like a meeting or something like more professional, I feel like even if I'm not saying anything, my face itself says a lot in the sense that like I react a lot. And sometimes like when I'm sitting at a meeting where I'm listening to something that just doesn't sound right, my first reaction is probably like, what, like, are you kidding me? Like it's on my face. And so, yeah, I've never personally experienced that.
I kind of want to add, I feel like I've been saying that older people enforce all of these things, that older people like have said racist things, but it's the younger generation too.
Yeah.
Like I've been in rooms where people have said things to my colleagues who may be a different race of me, and then they'll be like, I'll be like, hey, that was not a cool thing to say, you know, like maybe you have some implicit bias there. And this is like one time, my colleague literally said, if I'm a racist, you're a racist too for going against me. Ma'am, racism is not a slur. If you're listening to me, racism is not a slur. It's a verb. It's an action that you took that we perceive as racist. So just want to put that out there. Like young people, you're no stranger to it too. Like we're all colonized. Um, we all have those deeply colonial white people beliefs in us. And that's the problem with Westernism. That's the problem with the British people taking over all the parts, or like Spanish colonialism taking over all the parts. Because I'm a product of that. Look at me. I'm multiracial, multi-ethnic. I'm a product of all of these colonizers.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I think, I think Jeannie said it perfectly earlier that there's a lot of issues where different cultures aren't, um, you know, understood by different communities, but it's also within our own community and how we perpetuate a lot of these stereotypes, right? Like, how many times did we hear anti-blackness or anti-black, like jokes being made, or jokes making fun of like queer folks, like LGBTQ, being gay, right? Like all these things are part of our culture and part of our communities, and if we don't start addressing them within, then we also have to figure out, like, when we experience it ourselves by other cultures, right? Like, what's like, it's not that I'm saying it's fair, but I'm saying that we gotta examine within and outside of our communities as well, like Jeanne was saying. Yeah. So I don't know. Is there any burning story that y'all need to share? Get it off your chest.
I think it's not like a story, but it's more like a comment. I feel like for me, it's so hard for me to like think back sometimes because it's not like it wasn't traumatizing enough that like I have to remember it, but I feel like because it's been such a long cycle that like we're numb to it in a way, right? Like we settle for that growing up, and like I think that's also part of the reasons why we don't remember a lot of it, because all of a sudden everything just feels so normal because it happens way too often. And I think when we see it in the news especially, like we get really like angry and we get upset, and then we it's kind of like that culture that's happening with like BLM, right? Like especially a lot of us like on social media, you see that there's like a big wave of everyone participating, a big wave of everyone saying all these things and like posting all these things, but like where's everyone now? Like, like that's just like a question that I have. It's just like, this is just like a one time thing, like it's just gonna happen for a couple weeks and all of a sudden if like it just dies down. Like I think it's just a constant conversation that we all need to have within each other and like within our friend groups and things like that, especially like the friends that like have that toxic like environment of constantly saying things that they shouldn't be saying, right? Like being able to like call them out. And I feel like, are they your real friends if you call them out for the better and then they just get angry at you, like I have to think about that a lot myself too. Like if I call out my friends for saying a certain word, like the N word or the R word, like how are they going to react? Sometimes, like if I have to think about that, sometimes I'm like, are they really my friends if I can't correct them? And like, I don't know. And like, especially like, I feel like a lot of things can be performative nowadays because like social media behind the screen is so big. So like what happens like in person, like not like saying that, oh, like let's all meet up in like a community area and like let's just talk about that, but like even just like within like your own friend groups and things like that, like just kind of sad. Makes me kind of like confused with life and like kind of tired just a little bit. I don't know.
I don't know. I kind of wrote out like a paragraph I wanted to end with. I don't know. I just got too enthusiastic about this podcast.
Go,
Um,
go off,
but
Anoop. Go
I'm
off.
a I'm gonna read it. So this is like my diplomatic ending to people who like feel like, hey, I haven't done the best in the past. Well, you can always improve. Like, if LT taught me anything, go to LT. Um, it was to call people in rather than just be like continually angry about all the things that happened to me. So here goes. I want to say everyone's story is different. Like what we discussed on the podcast, we're still learning about how to talk about identities that fall outside of our traditional understanding of race in America. And so that's why we need to improve race relations. That's why ethnic studies is such a good start for that, just understanding where communities of color are coming from. So for those who are confused, you're in good company. Like we're not obviously the last say on anything. Do your research. I also want to add like vocab, like what people are being comfortable labeled as, changes person to person. I don't know if others perceive mixed as a slur. Do your research, but to me, like saying that I'm mixed invites all these associations like mixed up or mixed company or mixed signals. And then they all just reinforce the fact that I'm not normal, that like mixed people are confused or they're like, I don't, okay, trigger warning, defective. it like has ties to, you know, also animal breeding. You know, how people are always like mixed breed dogs or mixed breed horses. So those are my thoughts of that. Like for me, when people call me mixed, I'm like, whoa, identity crisis mode. I don't know, like, am I not pure then? But this is me. So I want to say that like I use the terms multiracial, multi-ethnic. Other people could be comfortable with the term mixed. So if a person chooses to share their label with you, you are privileged because they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to tell you like what they self-identify is, because they have a right to self-identify, but they also don't have to publicize it to everybody. If you do want to educate yourself more, one of the like founding mothers of like mixed race studies is Martha Roots, and she kind of created like a Bill of Rights for multiracial, multi-ethnic, ethnified folks, and that includes, let me say, let me underline, let me bold, the right to create and change one's identity across time and space. Okay, thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
All right. Well, I think, that sums up really a lot, right? Like, take the time to educate yourself. You're doing a great job. You're obviously seeking out ways to connect to the community and, listening into the dialogue. Hopefully what we've shared also prompts reflection for you. Reflect, talk to your communities, talk to your friends, like Jeannie was saying. And thank you for joining us on another episode of Keeping Up with APID. Thank you so much. We appreciate you all. Bye.